philosopher was Voltaire, born France Marie Arquette, as Erasmus 2 centuries ago had embodied Christian humanism. Voltaire essentially personified the Enlightenment, commenting on the enormous range of subjects in a variety of literary forms. Educated by the Jesuits, he became a gifted writer, known for his sharp wit. His gusto for provocation landed him in prison for libel, and soon afterward in temporary exile in England. Voltaire became an admirer of British political institutions, and he was persuasive convert to the ideas of Newton, Bacon, and Locke. His single greatest accomplishment may have been popularizing Newton's work in France and more generally championing the cause of British imperialism against a French scientific community that remained indebted to Descartes and destructive reasoning. Voltaire's philosophical letters, published after his return in 1734, was an immediate sensation. Voltaire's themes were religion and political liberty, and his weapons were comparisons. His admiration for British culture and politics became a stinging critique of France and other absolutist European countries. He praised British open-mindedness the country's respect for scientists, and its support for research. He considered the relative weakness of the British aristocracy to be a sign of Britain's political health. Unlike the French, the British respected comments and people who engaged in it. Voltaire wrote, "The British tax system was rational, free of the complicated exemptions and the privileged that were ruling the French finances. The British House of Commons represented the middle class, and in contrast with France, absolutism brought balance to British government and checked arbitrary power." In one of the book's more incendiary passages, he argued that in Britain, violent revolution had actually produced political moderation and stability. The idol of arbitrary power was drowned in seas of blood. The English nation is the only nation in the world that has succeeded in moderating the power of its kings by resisting them. Voltaire also admired the religious pluralism and toleration of British society, which brought together citizens of different religions in harmony, in a harmonious and productive culture. In this and other instances, Voltaire's oversimplified British Catholics, dissenters, and Jews did not have equal civil rights, and the British policy of toleration did contrast with Louis the 14th intolerance of Protestants. The revocation of the Edict of Nantes. The revocation of the Edict of Nantes had stripped French protesters of civil rights and helped create the atmosphere in which Jean Calas and others were persecuted. Voltaire's best-selling novel gently mocked the optimism of some enlightened thinkers. The young Candidate's tutor, Pangloss, insisted on repeating that this is the best of all possible worlds, even as Candide and Candide's love, the beautiful Congonde, suffered terrible accidents and misfortune. In the scene shown here, Candide is thrown out of a castle by the Congon's father, with great kicks in the rear, after they have been caught kissing behind a screen. The mix of serious message and humorous delivery was quite common in Enlightenment literature. Of all forms of intolerance, Voltaire oppressed religious bigotry most. He passionately denounced religious fraud, faith in miracles, and superstition. He most famous battle cry was "Icaz inflame," crush the infamous thing, by which he meant all forms of repression, fanaticism, and bigotry. The less superstition, the less phantasm, and the less phantasm, the less misery. He did not oppose religion per se, rather he sought to rescue morality which he believed came from God, from dogma, elaborate ritual, dietary laws, moralic prayers, and a powerful church bureaucracy. He argued for common sense and simplicity, contending that these would bring out the goodness in humanity and establish more stable authority. The simpler the laws are, the more the magistrates are respected. The simpler the religion will be, the more one will revere its ministers. Religion can be simple. When enlightened people will announce a single God, rewarder and avenger, no one will laugh, everyone will obey. Voltaire relished his position as a critic. He was regularly exiled from France and other countries, and his books were banned and burned. As long as his plays attracted large audiences, however, the French king felt he had to tolerate the author. Voltaire had an attentive international public, including Frederick of Prussia, who invited him to his court in Berlin, and Catherine of Russia, with whom he corresponded about reforms she might introduce in Russia. When he died in 78, a few months after a triumphant return to Paris, Voltaire was possibly the best-known writer in Europe. And that was page 568.